Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad. Tehami. In today's program, we are going to take up for discussion two important developments. The first relates to an important presser by Director General Inter-Services Public Relations, Lt.Gen General Ahmed Sharif, clarifying Army's position on important topics. The second one relates to US President Joe Biden withdrawing from presidential race and his endorsement and nomination for his Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democrats' candidate. Let's begin with the first one. Lt.Gen General Ahmed Sharif has said, let me quote some important statements he has made in this particularly important presser. A massive illegal political mafia in the country is trying to sabotage Azm-e-Istehkam operation to fulfill its vested interests. Very important issues were being sacrificed on the altar of politics. Azm-e-Istehkam was a comprehensive counter-terrorism campaign launched through national consensus and was not just a military operation as it was being portrayed. Unquote. Regarding Army's response to the violent agitation in Bannu, the DG-ISPR'S said, let me quote, that the Army's response was as per the standard operating procedure and according to the orders, unquote. He has also raised some important question as to why such type of incidents happen, and we'll be taking the analysis regarding that also. He has also termed the criticism and the narrative against Army and its leadership on social media as digital terrorism. Let me bring in our panelists to talk about this important press conference by DG-ISPR. We are honored to have been joined on Skype by Lt.Gen retired Uddin Haider. He's senior analyst. General Haider, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, let's talk about this particular important statement that has been made by DG-ISPR, saying that a very strong lobby had a vested interest because of which it didn't want the National Action Plan to succeed, and also added that the entity in question was receiving a lot of money. He's also said it's not based on any ideology, but involves a lot of money. General Haider, whom do you identify? This vested interest group who is trying to bring bad name to the Army and its leadership for money and not even because of ideology.
Your voice is very distorted and I have not understood your question. Please.
Okay, General Haider, let me quickly repeat this particular question by looking at this statement made by DG-ISPR regarding a very strong lobby which has a vested interest because of which it didn't want the National Action Plan to succeed and is involved in false and fake propaganda on social media regarding the operation Azm-e-Istehkam. DG-ISPR says that this particular entity in question was receiving a lot of money, and its criticism or the narrative it is trying to build regarding Azm-e-Istehkam is not based on any ideology. Which this particular vested interest group do you identify?
I think it was quite clear from the press conference that he was talking about the people who are creating anarchy in the country, and he also mentioned 9th May. From that you can infer which party he is referring to. But I'm not quite sure whether that party will take money from our enemies to destabilize Pakistan. That will be a very, very sad day for Pakistan if a major political party of Pakistan indulges anything of the sort. But the second portion of the question is regarding misuse of social media, fake news, being posted, which is true. There is no doubt about this fact. That a lot of false news and fake news about Bannu and other affairs are, circulated, which pollute the minds of many onlooker Pakistanis. And that has to be curtailed. And I think that is a part of the 5th generation war. Our enemies are using the social media to demoralize Pakistanis and for us to lose faith in our leadership, in our country. That is their aim. But all said and done, there is a dichotomy here that many people have voted for the party for which they are saying that they are creating hindrance in the achievement of targets against the terrorists. So I think one has to give some proofs. And but let me also say that the war and terror cannot be won by the army alone, or by the security forces alone, or by the other, organs of state, unless the people are actively involved in defeating terrorism and making Pakistan a peaceful place. Because most of the intelligence is produced by the people. These terrorists, where they live, they hire vehicles, they buy weapons, and their activities are all seen by the public. And I think public can be a great source of information and help. And if we want this operation to succeed, then we have to carry everybody along, including the people of Pakistan. And for that matter, we have to, rather than a blame game and pointing fingers, we have to create circumstances and an atmosphere in which people, are feeling satisfied with government policies, with their, just uh, treatment of all the parties. And I feel that if we want to create such an atmosphere, we should. And for that reason, there are many old people and women who are locked up on 9th May issue for last over 1 year, and they can be termed as political prisoners. So I think they will not run away from the country. And if they're allowed to go to their homes and be available in the courts to face their cases, and if they're found guilty, they should be punished. And secondly, we must ask somebody that we have had several operations of this nature, uh, operations against the terrorists, and there have been many courts, including military courts, which have punished these people, some of them. But nobody knows how many of them have been convicted, how many of them been hanged for their heinous crimes of killing people, of blowing up, and killing Chinese, and also blowing up girls' schools and government offices and attacking the armed forces of Pakistan. So we are facing a situation in which we need consensus in the country. We need to carry everybody along, and we have to, by just actions, dismantle these people who are having such ideas. They feel that they have been left out, or a just treatment is not being meted out to them. So that would be good for the cause of this operation, I feel.
Right, General Haider, when we talk about the DGISPR talking specifically about Operation Azm-e-Istehkam, saying it a comprehensive counterterrorism campaign which has been launched with a national consensus, or rather just a military operation as it was being portrayed. So when we try to differentiate as to understand between a comprehensive counterterrorism operation as compared to just a military operation, could you please shed a bit of light for our viewers to understand that one into detail?
Operations in the last 15, 20 years were massive operations with the use of armed forces, rangers, police, scouts, everybody. In a massive way, there was, movement of population, clearing certain areas, Sabat, relocating all these inhabitants and carrying out a cleaning up operation in a big way. So there's nothing of the sort is happening now. It is an intelligence-based operation in which, on finding workable intelligence, actionable intelligence, the security forces tackle with the terrorists. And that is why I'm saying that we should not leave it to the security agencies, intelligence agencies, to find out the location and the activities of terrorists. We must include people who can provide, who are a great source of providing information and helping people. So that is the difference, that it is intelligence-based small operations wherever the news is gathered, and it is not a clean-up type of big operation like previously in Swat and settled districts of Pakistan or other places, including FATA, erstwhile FATA.
Right. So the chances when we talk about the success of this particular operation, there's been a statement that has also been made by DG ISPR regarding if Operation Azm-e-Istehkam was properly implemented, it would not only eliminate terrorism but also lead to societal and national uplift. I'll come back to you, General Haider, to take your deeper understanding regarding this particular statement. For now, we are honored to have been joined on the phone line by another participant, Dr. Maleeha Sultan, Senior Analyst. Dr. Maleeha, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, looking at this very important presser by DG ISPR, when he talks about that very strong lobby had a vested interest because of which it didn't want the National Action Plan to succeed, saying that it is receiving a lot of money and it's not the question of ideology on which its criticism is based. How are you looking at this particular statement?
I think the statement is quite profound because it highlights not only what Pakistan is facing, but also the fact that we are dealing with a constant issue in which violence is being used for political gain. And what's sad is that while the Pakistani lives are at stake as we're facing increased cases of terrorism, there is being political, saber rattling on this. The fact of the matter is that the Pakistani blood and most importantly, the safety and security of the Pakistani citizens remains to be the paramount and should remain the paramount concern of the state and its functionaries along with the government. So if there is any lack of effective measures being taken against it, then of course all political parties, including all other actors which are responsible for this, need to be taken into account. This is something on which there should be no negotiations, but it needs to be considered in the same context.
Right, Dr. Maleeha, unfortunately, we are unable to hear you clearly. I guess there is a little bit of distortion.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yes, I'm just saying that we need to understand that while we are dealing with the issue of terrorism in Pakistan, it's extremely important for us to consider the fact that if there is political saber rattling on an issue which involves the safety and security of the Pakistani lives, but most importantly Pakistani citizens, then people need to be held accountable. Because politics on one side, it's not at all acceptable that in the name of politics, we are not making strong and clear headway with regards to our counterterrorism objectives.
Right. Dr. Maleeha, how do you differentiate between a comprehensive counter-terrorism campaign as compared to just a military operation, which has also been alluded to by the DG ISPR in today's presser?
You see, purely a military use essentially means that you're using kinetic force and you're using intelligence-based operations for actually carrying out operations against the perpetrators. But what we have understood is that terrorism is actually an enterprise. So this basically means there are lots of facilitators, there are lots of networks, linkages to organized crime, criminal groups, along with that, political, actors as well. Henceforth, it's extremely important that these elements are also investigated. One, number two, that action is taken against them in the same prelude that we are able to carry out effective measures against them. Because if these people are going to walk out of your court, and they're going to further perpetuate and create distance between the masses, the government, the armed forces, and the people, then we have failed as a state. And it is the responsibility of the federal government as well as the provincial government to look at this issue very seriously. Because at the end of the day, it's the Pakistani lives which are at threat. It is going to be Pakistan's sovereignty which will be questioned. It is Pakistan's borders to be made secure. And most importantly, these are some decisions which you have to make, because if you are going to be held politically responsible for the lives and peace and security of the country and your countrymen, then these are actions which are necessary. So it's something on which there is a broad consensus. It is sad that in the Game of Thrones, we are looking at all of this not as a positive measure of action, but as a measure in which there is being, shadow representation in terms of how it's being represented to the people, how it is being voiced. So political strides on one side, counterterrorism actions on another, and actions needs to be taken.
Writer Dr. Maleeha Sultan, Senior Analyst, joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for taking time out for views and news tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of the first segment, and in the second segment, we'll be taking up for discussion the withdrawal of US President Joe Biden from the presidential race and nomination and endorsement of his Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democrats' new nominee. For that, stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to Views on News. US President Joe Biden has withdrawn from the presidential race 2024 and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as the new nominee for the Democrats. He wrote on X, let me quote him, "While it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term," unquote. He said he will speak to the nation about his decision later in the week in detail, and there has been pressure we have seen after the disaster performance at the first presidential debate by Joe Biden to step aside. Meanwhile, we have also seen the reaction coming from the Republican candidate and former President Donald Trump, who survived an assassination attempt, most recently saying, let me quote him, "Crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. We will suffer greatly because of his presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly. Make America great again," unquote. Let me quickly bring in our esteemed panel of guests to talk about the situation as it is unfolding, developing as far as the presidential campaign of the US presidential election 2024 is concerned. In the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Manzoor Afridi, is foreign affairs expert. Dr. Afridi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. On the phone line, we are honored to have been joined by Ms. Maleeha Lodhi, former Pakistan's ambassador at the United Nations. Ms. Maleeha, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Now, this withdrawal by US President Joe Biden, is it a surprise or was it inevitable? And was it just because of that disastrous performance at the first presidential debate, or that dismal performance during the tenure in the last 3.5 years so far? What's your understanding? Ms. Maleeha, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you. I think it did not come as a surprise because the pressure for Biden to step down had been building up for some time. And yes, it was after that disastrous debate with former President Trump that the Democratic Party, many top leaders of the Democratic Party began to call on him publicly to step down. But there are many factors that have led to this. It's not just a disastrous debate. I mean, that became a catalyst, but it was not the cause. I think the cause, we have to look for many reasons for that. The age factor, he's 81 years old, and the age factor was being put by people inside the party and outside the party. And then I think also Biden didn't come across as a strong enough competitor to take on Trump. Trump has been leading in just about every opinion poll. His approval rating is much higher than Biden. And in the 5 key swing states, the states that determine in any respect the election outcome, Trump has been leading in all of them, and that's been for some time. So I think, yes, there seems to have been an inevitability about Biden stepping down. But of course, this is a huge blow. This is a huge setback for the Democratic Party, even though members of the Democratic Party are saying this gives them a second chance. They will have a better candidate, will have a better chance. But it is a setback, there's no doubt about it. It's unprecedented. On the, not quite on the eve of the election, a few months before the election, for a candidate to be changed. It really is very late, especially it would be very difficult for whoever is nominated to really put up an effective fight against Trump.
How do you think the Republicans are going to capitalize on this particular sudden turn of events? And is there going to be an increased chance for former President Donald Trump after this particular withdrawal by Joe Biden? Or with the incoming of a new candidate, the momentum, if picked by the Democrats, they are going to put a little bit of more challenge for former President Donald Trump?
I think Trump is already ahead. And there's very little time for the Democratic candidate who hasn't even been nominated yet. And we have to wait and see what happens. Will the Democratic Party unite behind the candidate? Will there be bloodletting within the Democratic Party with a disagreement over who should be candidate? We don't know. I think what is being said is that if quick agreement is reached on who should be the candidate, then perhaps, the candidate has some opportunity to build a momentum. But if it waits for the Democratic Convention, which is 4 weeks away now, in other words, there's no agreement now until the Democratic Convention, which is going to take place in Chicago in 4 weeks' time. If the nomination process is dead, then you can see how little time there will be. Plus, we could also see that in that convention, disagreements are publicly voiced, and that will really make the Democratic Party look like a party in shambles, while the Republicans are united behind Trump. I think Trump is in a very good position right now. But, in any election, we cannot sort of say with any degree of certainty what the outcome will be.
Right. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of distortion, and perhaps at times we can't hear you properly. But Ms. Maleeha Lodhi, your points are well taken. Pakistan's former ambassador at the United Nations, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Dr. Afridi, now looking at this particular withdrawal, what's your understanding? We've seen that pressure coming from within the Democrats from last 3 weeks or so, especially after the disastrous performance at the first presidential debate. Do you think President Joe Biden has succumbed to that particular pressure, or he has finally realized that there are certain health issues on the basis of which he perhaps can't defeat Trump in this particular election, and more so, even if re-elected, he won't be able to serve the nation with that vigor?
I think different factors they are involved in the withdrawal of the Joe Biden from the presidential candidacy and campaign. As you said, the poll performance, yes, we can count it, and there was a lot of pressure from the American public, especially if we see the first debate with the Trump. So there, yes, we could realize that how he was pointing his arguments and how there was an upper hand or winning position of Donald Trump in the arguments and by convincing the American public. I think that is the foremost. And second, yes, there was also a lot of pressure and criticism from a large portion of the American public, particularly and generally from the world public, that because of his health, because of his very much old age, he could give a chance to maybe younger people like now we can say she is more junior, I mean Kamala Harris, to be a president of the United States. So in this regard, even within the Democratic Party, there was a lot of criticism from the senators and from the congressmen, from the leadership of the party, that he should not run for the next term. Already he has completed, and he is going near to complete his first term, I mean Joe Biden. So that's why he withdrew from this candidacy and from this American presidential run. But on the other hand, if we see, it can be a tactic, and also he is playing card, not only Joe Biden, but the whole Democratic Party, in the sense that now Joe Biden has nominated Kamala Harris for this candidacy. And if we see, so this is a great chance for Kamala Harris, to be maybe next the American president. If she becomes the president, so she will be the first American president. She will be the second, Asian American, and the second Black American after Barack Obama to be the U.S. president. So in this case, the American public, they may convert their sympathies, and they may join the Kamala Harris in its run for presidency. So it's possible, because everything. I think there is no end point in the politics. And if we see the American politics, so it is very much, there is very much pomp and show within the American public every time if there is the presidency campaign or presidential elections. So it can be a winning point.
So I'll come back to you to understand, do we understand that after this nomination or the endorsement by Joe Biden, there's a consensus or unanimity when it comes to the backing of Kamala Harris from within the Democrats, or the Democrats are still divided from within as to the nomination of Kamala Harris is concerned? We are now honored to have been joined by another participant, Mr. G.R. Baloch, joining us on Skype, former ambassador. Mr. Baloch, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, this withdrawal by US President Joe Biden. Now, there was a pressure being built, especially after that disastrous performance at the first presidential debate. So there was a pressure from within the ranks of the Democrats. Now, with Joe Biden stepping aside, is it a good thing for the Democrats? And has it increased any chances for the Democrats to have any sort of gain as far as the overall election outcome is concerned?
Jawad, thank you. I think it's very interesting elections this time in the US. One, it was too personal between Biden and Trump. I remember one of his statements, he was asked whether, given his weak health, would he like to still run even if Trump does not? Now, that time, Trump had not been nominated by the Republican, although he himself had announced for his candidacy. He said, yes, if he runs, I will, in any case, will run for it. So perhaps his decision to really, despite his very fragile health, to still run for this presidency for the second term, I'm talking of Biden, perhaps it was more triggered or propelled by his more personal chemistry or personal contest or personality clash with Trump versus Biden than on the real ground realities, whether he was popular or not, whether his personal health particularly would allow him to take this onerous responsibility of running one of the biggest democracy, one of the actually strongest country in the world. So I think there was this element, and it was always kind of people were suspicious, including myself as an observer, whether can he sustain the rigors of the U.S. electioneering. I mean, we see how much pressure does it generate in terms of debates, in terms of public scrutiny, in terms of creating public messaging, and also Trump, in terms of being a very popular, like following a populist model of leadership, was actually, in fact, already on a winning wave in a way, because I think as late before actually even this decision, he was quite ahead in many states which were either undecided, so what they call swing states, or those who were democratic states. So I think from the word get-go, since his nomination by his party, I think Trump had probably had an edge over Biden, but definitely, yeah.
I see you about holding you over here for a second. You already talked about Biden versus Trump. That very intensity that was related to this particular election campaign for being the president in 2024, Biden versus Trump. Now, for Mr. Biden stepping aside, do you see the intensity based on this particular rhetoric also? Is it going to be Trump versus Kamala Harris, or is it going to be something different this time around? Is it going to be more based on the real issues the public in the United States of America is actually faced with?
I think what has happened is that the battle lines are already drawn. The opinions are divided. There is a chasm in the U.S. Public opinion based on, unfortunately, identity politics, nationalism, ultra-nationalism, if you will, And the real issues, of course, every party is articulating its own issues, but there's a very interesting fact which was actually a part of a report that in the past 2 to 3 years, Biden did like really double down on doing a lot of development in the red states, even especially the rust states as they call them, where there's this white blue collar labor who really support Trump and Republicans, building bridges, building roads, but it did not make a dent on for his support or did make any difference on their opinion. So unfortunately, in these days,
that's a very interesting point that you have just
yeah,
highlighted. So what was the reason behind that? It
but
couldn't
this
make a
I'm
dent
coming
despite
to.
all that
Yeah,
infrastructure development.
I'm coming to that. Unfortunately, the electioneering in the world in general and in the US in particular, as I said, is based now, and especially Trump factor has brought in more personality, charisma, narrative, the battle of narratives. Of course, it has taken also an ugly turn in terms of character assassination. And obviously, what has happened now after the unfortunate incident of firing on him, an attempt on his life, I think he does stand a good chance of getting the sympathy wave, as we always say, or a sympathy vote. So I think what one sees as a bystander from here is that so far Trump is weighing heavily, and Republicans. Now we'll see whether with the new candidate Kamala Harris, whether Kamala Harris is endorsed by the Democrats. So I think it will all depend on the unity within the ranks of Democrats if they really go and endorse.
Mr. Baloch, I'll come to you as to what could be the prospects of the unity as far as the backing to Kamala Harris is concerned. I'll take this particular point to Dr. Afridi. Dr. Afridi, do we see the Democrats from within unanimously backing Kamala Harris, or is it just the nomination? We still have to see the proper nomination during that National Democratic Convention that is going to be held on August 19th. But do you see that unanimity within the ranks of Democrats as far as the backing of Kamala is concerned?
So far, it's unclear. It's just the endorsement or a kind of a nomination from Joe Biden. But the real nomination, that will be in next month in August in Democratic Convention at Chicago, United States. And if we count the total delegates, the Democratic delegates, those are some around 4,700. And in this number, out of this number, more than 2,300 Kamala Harris, she has to achieve, right? And for this purpose, I think that convention is very much necessary. But if we see so far, more than 500 delegates, they have endorsed this nomination for Kamala Harris. If we see, I mean, within in these 1-2 days, so I think this number is too much, more than 500. So it can be a hope that she can get the unanimous majority of the Democratic delegates.
So if she gets that final nomination and she becomes a Democrats candidate to contest against Donald Trump, do you think the campaign for the rest of the months until those presidential elections finally happen in November is going to be on different lines as compared to an earlier Democratic presidential campaign with President Joe Biden as the candidate?
I think so, because there will be jubilation within the American public to support this Kamala Harris, for U.S. presidency. Yeah, there was, for example, Hillary Clinton, but her background was a little bit different. As she was the wife of Bill Clinton, as she was white American, but now the case of Kamala Harris is totally different. She is already vice president, and as I said, for the first time, Black American. the people who belong to, I mean, the non-white people, the Asians, Africans, and some others within the American public, they can support Kamala Harris in this regard. Second thing, I think the way of arguments, the delivery of services, the way of talking, it can be different from the Joe Biden, right, about about the winning hearts of the American people. So in this case, yeah, we can see a difference, but now it will depend on the coming 4 months till the U.S. final, presidential election, the day where we can see that who will be the U.S. president. So
from here, this point onwards, what would it take Kamala Harris as the presidential candidate for the Democrats in next 3.5 to 4 months to make a substantial gain against former President Donald Trump, who seems to be already in quite a convincing position?
Yeah. If we see,
what would it take for them to, gain that substantial ground against him?
Now the current position of Donald Trump is very much strong because of his campaign, because of his popularity, because of his populist leadership. But anything can happen and anything can be changed. About that, what are those points, those things which are very much compulsory, indispensable for Kamala Harris, that she can put in front of American public. I think her vice presidency, I mean, how she remained within the office, right? What she has done for the Americans, what she has done for the American foreign policy, the global standing of the United States, right? And if she presented in a better way, that can be the point. And second, how she can capitalize being women to be the next US president, how she can convince, how she can use, make use of the social media, how she can visit, the Americans, especially the women, American women at different corners of the United States. I think these are the things that in various conventions, the electoral campaigns that she can do to win the hearts and minds of the American people.
Right. Mr. Baloch, now, as already described by Dr. Afridi, the number of delegates and how much number of delegates need to endorse and back Kamala Harris as Democrats' candidate for presidential election. Do you think she would be able to garner that enough support to be finally the Democrats' candidate for the presidential election? And what sort of a difference do you see is going to be as far as the presidential campaign for the Democrats is concerned as compared to what the campaign was earlier going on when Joe Biden was the candidate?
My understanding is a bit different. Perhaps the primaries for the nominations have already taken place. That probably stage is now over as far as Kamala Harris is concerned, one. Second, she has been, because in each party there is what's called establishment, the people who wield really institutional power and on almost permanent basis. So what I was reading that perhaps at least as far as the Democratic nomination concerned, I think all the 50 delegates of the Democratic parties from the 50 states have already endorsed her. That be the case, and I think some leading members of the Democratic Party have also endorsed her. One, and I think there's also a question of expediency, and perhaps with that token, her luck, that it is too late for any new contest to take place, which will require a debate within the party. Then they'll have to shortlist people. So I think she will be a candidate by default. One, she is the vice president. Number two, there's no time already. It's too late for any new nomination to be made by the Democrats. And number three, she's a woman. She was also brought up a kind of a mixed race. That they can play on Democrats, that look, it could be for the first time that a woman will be the president. Of course, we know that Ms. Clinton, she tried, but she failed. So I think this again can be played. So probably the Democrats would like to play on this. And most likely, my assessment is that she will get the endorsement of the Democratic Party at different levels, which is already pouring in. In fact, the biggest indicator was the contributions. 50 million in the first day of announcement. It's a huge sum. It means, and they were all like grassroots donors. It means the decision by Joe Biden has been accepted by the rank and file of Democratic Party, and I think his judgment is accepted as to be very sound. So I think his nomination carries a lot of weight.
Unfortunately, short of time, your quick last comment regarding this sudden change of the situation as far as the change of candidacy and the nomination of Kamala Harris for the Democrats is concerned. Is it going to give more challenge to Republicans, or Republicans have got more to capitalize from it?
No, I think the Republicans would not have any advantage. Rather, they'll get a competition from her. She is a fierce fighter. The way she is risen from the ranks from a prosecutor to the level of vice president, of course, the president. So I think Republicans will get a good fight back from Kamala Harris. This is what I
right,
see.
Mr. Jawad, former ambassador, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for taking time out for views on the news tonight. We really appreciate that. In the studio, we were joined by Dr. Manzoor Afridi, foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Afridi, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.